A very good evening to everyone. I welcome you to the fifth session of the IRIS 2.0 webinar series. Today, we are exploring the Center of Excellence in Molecular Materials and Functions, focusing on molecules as the basic building blocks. So, we'll be diving into two exciting areas, atomically precise metallic clusters and gas hybrid cages. These tiny clusters of atoms and molecular cages have unique properties like fluorescence and catalysis that differ from regular molecules and materials. The group is studying gas hydrates, looking at molecular cages containing carbon dioxide, methane, and more, with applications in both fundamental research and practical uses. It's my pleasure and honor today to welcome Professor Talpal Pradeep and team, the principal investigator of the center. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce him. Professor Pradeep currently holds the esteemed position of the Institute Professor, Deepak Parekh Institute Chair Professor, and Professor of Chemistry with the Department of Chemistry at IIT Madras. In addition to his academic roles, Professor Pradeep serves as the founder and professor in charge of the International Center for Clean Water. His dedication to advancing research is evident in his mentorship of over 250 students across diverse academic levels. This includes the supervision of 60 completed and 30 ongoing PhD students and guidance on almost 120 master's theses, 40 postdoctoral researchers, and several visiting students from both India and abroad. Professor Pradeep's scholarly contributions are substantial with a prolific publication record that boasts approximately 600 articles in reputable journals. Furthermore, he has authored 3 published books and contributed to 6 chapters in various scholarly publications. His impactful work is underscored by an impressive citation count exceeding almost 31,900 and has an index of 86. Notably, his intellectual property portfolio includes 120 patents. Recognized for his exemplary contributions to the field, Professor Pradeep has been honored with numerous prestigious awards on both national and international scales. Among these accolades are the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in 2008, the World Academy of Sciences Prize in Chemistry in 2018, the Padma Shri in 2020, Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz International Prize for Water in 2022, and the Inai Award in 2023 stand as a testament to his outstanding achievements and dedication to advancing scientific knowledge. Welcome, Professor. So, without further ado, let's get started with today's session.
Well, thank you, Thania, for this kind introduction. I hope my slide can be seen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My voice is it is audible well, I suppose, and so we can get started. I have along with me a few of my colleagues who have joined from different parts of the world. Professor Nonappa has joined from Finland, and on behalf of Graham Cooks, I have Jyotirmayi Ghosh, who has joined from Purdue University. I have my colleague Palaniselvam from Chemistry Department, and I hope a few more others will join in the course of time. I will make this presentation in about 35 minutes or something, so that there will be some time to make a short presentation by Jyotirmayi Ghosh on the recent things that have happened at his place, as well as in case there is some material available from Nonappa, we will briefly browse through this and take questions. When we started about 2.5 years ago, or close to about 3 years, we asked this question that is it possible with an international team of people to make an impact in the area of molecular materials and functions? To me, molecular materials would become increasingly relevant in the course of time as everything, the material world is becoming increasingly molecular. To do this, there is a need to have an international network of high caliber individuals. And you see a large number of them here on the slide. And they represent most of the active research groups in this limited area that we wanted to focus on, namely atomically precise clusters and gas hydrates. The team is truly outstanding. And therefore, it is not possible to cover all that they have done in this limited time. And there will be other opportunities as well. So those of you who wish to know more about the kind of activities each one of us is pursuing in diverse areas of molecular materials, please do contact us. I will only give you some glimpses, in fact, one or two glimpses, and then leave it to others to speak about certain areas. So there are 23 investigators representing 7 countries, and 11 of them are journal editors, fellows of national academies, and one president of a national academy, our own academy, and a huge cumulative citations. So they all speak volumes about the capabilities of all these people. So they all are put together to address an important subject area in which IIT Madras, in the course of time, could become an active center and of visibility. And to do this, we are just beginning that activity of this large team because it was started just a few months ago. We wanted to also have a large, extremely high caliber advisory board to tell us about what would be emerging and important and what directions we could have. We are yet to have the first meeting of the board, which will be happening on December 15th. So these members are Professor Digzaer from Stanford, Professor Thomas Tundat. So he is from University of Buffalo, and Professor R.A. Mashelkar, our very distinguished chemical engineer, well, an engineer without borders, Professor Mashelkar. And Professor Digzaer and Professor Mashelkar are fellows of the Royal Society in London. They're, of course, fellows of many other academies as well. So the broad objective of our center is to establish a globally recognized center on the study of molecular materials focusing on atomically precise clusters and gas hydrates. So if you look at these atomically precise clusters, these are entities of this kind which are composed of a specific number of atoms or metal atoms with well-defined structure, protected by ligands. So they stand alone as molecular entities in solution. They can also be taken into gas phase. They can be condensed in the form of crystals or solids, highly organized solids. And you can incorporate them in various kinds of matrices. You can functionalize them in different ways so that they can go into organic solutions. Water can go into biological fluids and polymers and many others. On the right side, you see gas hydrates, which are cages composed of or formed by water molecules with molecules such as methane trapped in it. So this also can form extended solids. You can also see one cage. You can see this or make this as an extended solid, as a crystalline solid. Study this material in great detail. So we wanted to focus on these 2 themes because of several specific reasons. We have expertise in this area. We have adequate resources in this area. We felt that we can make an impact in this. Why is that people are interested in atomic precision? So if you look at the global challenges in sustainability, it may be addressed through catalysis or CO2 storage, or it can be related to water, which is not mentioned here. All of them require atomic precision. So think about it. If you want to have a catalyst, highly efficient catalyst, just a few atoms of that catalyst can do the job instead of a bulk material. Of course, it contributes to sustainability in an increasingly resource-intensive world. This is the way towards sustainability. You're not going to replace, if you cannot replace platinum, obviously, for a given application, it is important to reduce the quantity of platinum. Likewise, you can think about very many possibilities. So we put this proposal together with a large number of diverse, atomically precise cluster solids and clathrate hydrates to address a number of problems. So you create these, you study their applications, and you look at their properties. So thinking about atomically precise clusters, they are objects of this kind, as I said previously, can be labeled by this kind of a simple label, AU25. Truly speaking, this only represents the number of atoms. It has a well-defined structure. It's also protected with certain ligands. It has certain charge state. This whole entity is stable in solution. As I said, it can also be exist in the gas phase. So you can measure a mass spectrum today of this. Thanks to the enormous advancements in this area of mass spectrometry, it is not only possible to see the composition of the cluster, but also the shape of it, which I will not be getting into in the course of this lecture, but mass spectrometry has advanced tremendously. Once you have these in a simple synthesis, you get Avogadro number of these species. You can also create crystals of these. And you can study these. Once you have crystals, you have structure, you can put this into computers and understand the properties of this. The chemical bonding, the spectroscopic signatures, and the properties. So that set of particles that we just now talked about, it's not only 25, this can be 29, or it can be very many of large nuclearities, or there can be different types of ligands, as you can see. There are all certain acronyms, which I do not want to expand now to reduce or to simplify this lecture. So they are all molecules. And we study the molecular properties of these systems. And we have, in the past 1 year or so, we have put together a number of aspects of these cluster systems and published a book in case you are interested in it. And this is available electronically as well. So the question we were asking was that if you start looking at molecular matter, people have studied molecular matter with carbon extensively. There is this fantastic molecule C60, composed of just carbon atoms alone. And this friend, who is in Tokyo University, he makes synthetically in a reaction vessel, well-defined structures of this kind, which are synthetically made nanotubes. Imagine, with that capability, you can make this tube of any length, or tube of any diameter, tube of any chirality. So you create synthetically materials of this kind at will. What does that tell us? Of course, this involves a large number of synthetic methods, development of chemistry of complex kind, but it tells so there's a whole range of such science happening globally. Although in the past few slides, I showed you some clusters made of gold and silver, but then any of these elements can be used to make atomically precise clusters, well-defined molecular solids, ultimately. So will it be possible to have molecular matter made with any element of the periodic table? So that would be a really fascinating question to address. I'm just coming from Karlsruhe Institute, where I saw someone who was making nanoparticles of almost any element of the periodic table. The side, the side, the side, and the side of the periodic table. The other side, in atomically precise, from atomically precise clusters, if you go to gas hydrates are entities of this kind. They exist like that. They look like ice, but with embedded molecules or trapped molecules within them. They typically exist at high pressure conditions under the ocean bed or in permafrost. So you can create, or you can dig a hole and then extract this from a depth in the permafrost regions or under the ocean bed. So lots of people look at these as future sources of fuel. And they can burn at room temperature in a laboratory condition. If when the gas comes out and if it is burnt, of course, the ice will burn. So with Jyotirmay in the lab, we examined these systems under ultra-high vacuum conditions, close to the interstellar-like environment, except the gravity. We find that you can indeed create these gas hydrates at very low pressures and extremely low temperatures. So in that paper, in 2019, he showed that if you have methane put on ice, along with ice, and wait for some time, you start seeing a peak. I'm trying to remove some object here. Yes. So if you look at this slide, all that we have done is we have deposited methane and water molecules on a surface at 10 Kelvin. And we have increased the temperature to some temperature 20 Kelvin, 30 Kelvin, etc. And we are measuring the infrared spectrum. And if you keep it at 30 Kelvin, where methane is still present on the surface or in this ice matrix, and wait for some time of 25 hours, and you see a new peak. This new peak, we studied that in great detail. We found that about 12.71% of the total methane that we have put in exists in this particular form, and this form turned out to be the gas hydrate form. Methane is trapped in this 512 cages of water. 512 cage implies that there is the cage, which is composed of 12 pentagonal rings of this kind. And that specifically has a vibration, and that vibration is what we are capturing. And we decompose this composite spectrum, the intensity tells us the concentration of this hydrate. So essentially, this is the experiment that we did. We mixed these two gases on the surface, anneal at various temperatures, and we find that you can create hydrate. And similarly, we can create carbon dioxide hydrate or many, many other hydrates. So in the past few years, in the molecular materials research, we have discovered a number of hydrates that can exist in the interstellar conditions. Well, that science is one important thing. But I told you that atomically precise clusters are also important. They can address some of the very big issues. So before starting on that, let me just mention one point, that the hydrates that we just now talked about, they have another analog. That is the hydrates made at high pressures. And these high pressure hydrates are the ones which can be prepared in the laboratory in Professor Rajneesh Kumar's lab, where he can put carbon dioxide in cages. He can put very many others also, but carbon dioxide especially is important because he can use it to store CO2 as carbon sequestration. So it is carbon capture is an important activity in ISRO. So we can address that kind of a global challenge, although the work that I presented was largely fundamental in nature. Similarly, clusters can also address larger challenges. So here is a cluster that we prepared in the lab last year. This is a cluster composed of 21 silver atoms protected with carborane thiores. These are these small balls that you see. These carborane thiores are prepared by Thomas Pesce in Czech Republic. Arijit, who is now with Stephanie Denon in Karlsruhe Institute, is expected to expand cluster science into many other areas of Stephanie Denon's expertise. Why I showed this cluster is because whenever we study clusters or stable materials of this kind, one question that comes up is that they are not stable to address global issues. But here is a cluster that is stable even up to 300 degrees centigrade. So in general, I would like to say that although materials of this kind are not as stable as bulk metals, they can be stable for realistic applications. Anaka in our group used one such cluster to address a global challenge. Here is a cluster of cobalt-6s8, some cluster like this, protected with ligands, and that is why it is very big. The core here is six cobalt atoms, and sulfur 8 atoms. This is soluble in an organic solvent, and if you do electrospray of this on a water surface, we can create microplates of this kind. These microplates or platelets assemble, and you get a film of this kind. This film has specific orientation, and that exposes specific crystallographic planes of this cluster crystal. Now, Anaka used this along with others in the group to detect arsenic electrochemically. And you see, this measurement is of various concentrations of arsenic in a buffer solution. But you can also do this in a tap water, real tap water, with all these arsenic concentrations added. Remember that in tap water, there are many other ions present. But even with all those ions, you can detect arsenic down to 5 ppb, or with this curve, we can see that it can detect even 1 ppb. This means that you can have a calibration graph of this kind, and arsenic concentration can be measured. And this measurement enables one to create a small sensor of this kind, and the electrochemical data coming out from the sensor can go on to a mobile phone, and that goes on to the cloud. So if you look at this electrochemical device, which is a potentiostat, which another colleague, Dr. Saurav Jana, makes in the lab, this is a pocket potentiostat. With that, it is possible to measure arsenic concentration down to 1 ppb without any pre-concentration, because as I told you, water can be used directly. And this whole device is as small as something like a mobile phone, or slightly larger than a mobile phone. This means that you can measure concentration of arsenic or any other ion similarly, maybe with other clusters across the world, collecting data. So once you have this data, obviously, it is possible to address the challenges of contamination, which we have developed other methods for removal. So in our country, now water quality is monitored across. So this is a collaborative effort of various institutions. I'm showing some data from one of the places. This is 13 villages in Haryana. We measure various water quality parameters. This means that global water quality can be monitored. So while all these studies are going on, the Center of Excellence has also resources allocated to build new capabilities to address some of the important issues. So we have built this cryo-electron microscopy facility, although it is not truly a COE facility, but the equipment and infrastructure there can be used for to address the questions that we have proposed in the COE. So here is a 300 kV microscope currently under installation. This is a facility that is just coming up, not yet inaugurated. This is a microscope that is being installed there. This is another closer view of that microscope being installed now. And this is another microscope, a 200 kV microscope currently getting ready. So with these microscopes, it will be possible to determine the structures of small clusters by what is called a single particle analysis. And this is a team which has done that in 2014 as the first such paper in this area of atomically precise clusters. Now, it is also possible that such clusters, such kind of a microscope can be used for other purposes to study molecular matter, such as cubic ice grown on a graphene surface. The COE is essentially to put people together. People from all those countries that I mentioned previously, they enrich our understanding of molecular matter. 12 COE lectures have been done already, and all these lectures delivered by many of our scientists, they are available on YouTube for those of you who wish to know about it. The COE has established its website to disseminate all the COE activities. It's available at this link. It will be moved to another separate place in the course of time. And more details are available there. The COE is conducting its first winter school during December 11 to 15, 2023. So many people have already registered for that, and several international experts are coming for delivering lectures. This will enrich our understanding and also expand the scope of this research. In 2024, we have already planned several events. We have Asia Nano 2024. It's people from several Asian countries visiting IIT Madras on this theme. Molecular Materials and Functions is a conference series that we had initiated. The first such conference was in 2022. And in 2024, we have already received permissions to start that, to continue that activity. And the date proposed is, as you can see, December 9 to 11. We also have Water for Life conference. We also plan to have a winter school in December 2024. So very many activities are planned and several COE facilities are coming up. I showed you just this cryo-electron microscopy, but we have multiple instrumentation facilities available on campus, and many are getting installed as well. And all of these will be available to expand the scope of our research in the course of time. I'm going to stop here, and I am going to request my colleague to make their short presentations, and after that, we can take questions. If Jyotirmay, you have 5 minutes to present.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna share my slides. Am I audible?
You are audible. You can share. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Jyotirmay from Professor Cook's lab. So today I'll briefly share what we are doing at Purdue and how the work is related to the central objective of the, one second, I'm trying to hide this. Yeah. Yes. So what we are doing as a group in Purdue University, what is our main objective, what we have achieved so far, and what we'll be achieving in the future. So the work, we basically, the group is recognized globally as a group for mass spec and in the development in the mass spectrometry. However, our research is not only focused in the mass spec. We also want to utilize mass spec for different applications. One such application is closely overlapping with the main objective of this COE, which is the molecular materials and their applications. So our main objective here is to synthesize different materials using microdroplet chemistry. You know that we need to have microdroplet to get mass spec, and this microdroplet chemistry can be utilized as a synthetic tool for different materials. Further objective is the utilization of these different materials for different applications. So one such application is the catalytic applications. The other objective in future is whether can we use the high throughput setup present at Purdue for screening not only the reactions, we also want to screen these different materials and their catalytic property. So high throughput setup will be utilized as a screening tool for the catalysts. So what we have achieved so far, we have synthesized copper nanoparticle, and we have shown that this copper nanoparticle can be utilized as catalyst for click reactions when the copper ions were electrospray deposited directly on the reaction mixture. We also published a review article where mass spectrometry was shown to be a method which is not only limited to an analytical tool, but also it can be utilized as a material synthesis. In future, we would like to, as I said, that high throughput screening of the different catalysts, and we also want to see whether different organic materials can be synthesized using our high throughput setup. So this is the one study where we have shown that copper nanocatalyst can be formed. So if you do the electrospray of copper ions directly on a reaction mixture, and you can form this copper nanocatalyst, which forms a thin film on the reaction mixture. Here, the reaction we have taken is the click reaction. Basically, the reaction is a reaction between an alkyne and azide, but the alkyne and azide will undergo azide-alkyne cycloaddition reaction in presence of this copper nanocatalyst to form this triazole ring type structure. So we thought So we thought, why if we spray the copper ions can form this copper nanocatalyst, and this nanocatalyst can how this can be effective in terms of the other known catalyst for this reaction. So we have to check the reaction kinetics in presence of this catalyst and some other traditional catalysts such as copper iodide. We have seen this electrospray deposited copper nanocatalyst shown acts effectively for this catalytic reactions. You also observed the different kinetic profile when the ions were deposited from this heterogeneous thin film. If you don't disturb the reaction mixture, it doesn't. It shows basically a slow kinetics. However, if you introduce some stirring condition, we name that as a rapid mixing kinetics. You basically see a much higher kinetic profile. So we thought, since you are allowing the rapid mixing, the surface area or basically there is a better interaction between the catalyst and the reaction mixture, and that's how the kinetics is getting enhanced. Utilizing our high throughput setup, we have screened different reactants. As you can see, 10 different alkynes were screened with different azides. We have found the successful hits for these particular reactions. The other study is this review article where we have shown that this electrospray deposition of ions can be utilized as the method for forming different materials. This is a decade-long story. So if you see this electrospray deposition, where by application of high voltage, you basically form droplet, or rather micro droplet in micron size. And this micro droplet, when it passes through the air, it basically the solvent is getting evaporated and the size is getting smaller, and you finally end up with a dry ions. And when you collect these dry ions on a collector surface, you basically end up with a different types of materials, and it depends on the choice of your collectors. So the first study from our group in 2014, where we have shown that when you electrospray gold or silver ions and you collect them on a collector surface, you end up with silver or gold nanoparticles. And this nanoparticle can be utilized as catalysts. So this is in ambient conditions. You can also do the mass selection by the soft landing method, where you do the mass selection. Here, one particular ion is the polyoxometallate. You do the mass selection and you deposit, or basically do ion soft landing on a collector surface, and you end up with different array of different materials. The other study in collaboration with Professor Pradeep's group is the formation of silver nanobrass. So instead of taking a flat metal surface, if you choose TM grid, you basically end up with silver nanoparticle, and this silver nanoparticle grow three-dimensionally to form 3D nanobrush type structure. The further application of these silver nanobrush were in the atmospheric water capture. So this particular review have showcased this subject, how this subject can be different materials can be formed, and different synthetic materials can be utilized as different applications. Now, talking about the microdroplet synthesis, it is not only limited to small organic reactions or nanoparticle. Larger molecules such as peptides or proteins can also be digested in the microdroplet. Scale was an issue initially, where we could get only nanogram to microgram scale, but with further development and optimization, this scale can be brought from nanogram to gram scale, where a solvent recycling system has been built. Throughput, which is an essential factor, and our interest lies on this area. Using our high throughput DAISY-MS setup, we could increase the throughput from 5 minutes per reaction to 1 second per reaction. So this is our high throughput setup method, where you basically pin your reaction mixture on a DAISY plate, and you can do the analysis spot wise, and that's how you basically increase your throughput time in 1 second per reaction. So as a future plan, we want to see how can we screen the catalyst, different catalyst, using our high throughput setup, and also our goal is to synthesize some new organic materials by this high throughput reaction screening setup. So far I have.
All right. Yeah. So thank you very much, Jyotirmay. We will get back to you in case there are questions. Professor Nonappa, is there anything that you wish to share? Can't hear you. You speak. You have you are not muted.
Can you
Yes, it is fine now.
hear me now?
Yes, can hear.
Because there is a lot of trouble. I am in IIT, and there is a problem with the network, and yeah, so I haven't prepared anything because I asked the instructions. I came to know only yesterday from
No problem. No
Mog.
problem. Just that you are here, and that's what I asked you. Otherwise, we can take questions. We have time to have all those presentations on 15th anyway.
Yes, there is a time if needed. I can, of course, show one slide for the community, because there is a lot of people here, which I will also discuss in the
yeah, one slide will
winter school. And yeah, something I would like to tell, because all this community has been working quite a lot on nano clusters, nanoparticle assembly, together with the Pradeep and also many PIs. Like, we have developed a lot of materials and methods to study. So here are two recent one perspective and feature article that essentially there's a lot of question that definitely there is no doubt that you need atomically precise nanoparticles at molecular level. But the question has been asked, do you really need these kind of molecules or clusters to build a higher order structure? So in this one feature article, of course, I discussed all these years work based on that, some of the hypotheses, which is termed as a precision nanoengineering, and why it is needed, and what are the importance and challenges and application. These hypotheses are also supported using a lot of work, which is also done in collaboration with Pradeep and many other groups. And the third, Pradeep, you have already mentioned about the cryo-TM facility. And one thing more important going beyond molecular level is supracolloidal level, where we create a lot of structure, but there is a limited understanding of these structures. So based on almost 10 years work, we have studied hundreds of different structures. We have also, I have written this, why we need to go for advanced electron microscopy, what are the applications and methodological advances. And this is something I think I will discuss more in the winter school. Just if you have time, please, these both are open access. It covers a lot of the activity that we have done together with many of the PIs in the Center of Excellence. Thank you.
Great, very nice. May I, in case there is anything, Dr. Palniselvam? You're muted.
No, I have report for today. Maybe I'm going to discuss this.
Sure, very good. Suraj, is there anything that you wish to present? 1 or 2 slides?
Not today, maybe on 15th.
Okay, good. So Dhanya, we are done with that here. And in case there are questions, we will look at those questions in the time that is available, never 10 minutes or so.
Yes, yes. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A box.
Very nice, very nice. So I request others also to chip in case there is anything that you need to add. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so Bhaskar Mukherjee is asking, can gas hydrates can also be used for hydrogen storage? How is it different from metal hydrates?
Well, in fact, any molecule can, in principle, be put into gas hydrate or in the form of a gas hydrate. The question is under what pressure, what conditions, what storage parameters, can it be transported, how much of hydrogen can be put there, how much of nitrogen can be put there, carbon monoxide can be put there, etc. Now, looking at all of these, the current understanding is that putting CO2 in gas hydrate is an economically advantageous situation. Because imagine that CO2 is produced along with nitrogen most often in a combustion process. And under the kind of hydrate forming conditions, CO2 alone gets trapped. And it therefore does not require CO2 to be specially purified from this combustion mixture to get it trapped. So therefore, there are advantages of this kind. Now, I do not know whether such advantages exist for all gases. So in the context of CO2, it is advantageous. In the context of something else, whether it is advantageous or not has to be studied. And which Rajneesh would have been a better person to answer that question. Unfortunately, he is not here. If you have anything further, please write a mail to rajneesh@iitm.ac.in. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So we have another question from Arnav Agrawal. He's asking, can these solids be used further in other ways, say construction or something?
Come again, that question.
So I think he's referring to your PPT. So he
Yes.
says, can these solids be used further in other ways, in construction?
Absolutely.
Any
So
other-
atomically precise clusters, if the question is that I have just shown one example in the context of sensing, but can it be used for anything else? So I touched upon sustainability. Now, I said catalysis is a subject area that people have used such clusters on. Essentially, oxidation catalysis. Now, selective oxidation. Now, industrially, a whole range of catalytic processes exist with nanoparticles, but these can be more efficiently done with clusters with better selectivity. One thing apart. It is used in sensing, I showed you. It's also used in biomedicine as delivery vehicles as well as for detection. This is the other subject area. that people are focusing on. It is possible that they can be used as luminescent or fluorescent labels in any kind of luminescent labels application. These are now soluble paints, right? This is a metal paint which is soluble. Now, imagine what you can do with such a paint, which can produce a metal film even at a very low temperature. These are areas that people are exploring today. We do not have any real practical application at this point in time on the kind of thing that I showed you, but in the context of sensing, in the context of luminescent, in the context of sensing, in the context of biomedical delivery, in the context of catalysis, industrial applications are indeed feasible. Others need to be expanded upon.
Thank you. So next we have a question from Dikshita Kasturi. What is mass spectrometry?
Very nice. Mass spectrometry is an analytical method to measure the mass of molecular or mass of an object, which we call an analyte. And by measuring the mass of that object, you understand what that object is. For example, imagine you have a gas mixture containing, let us say, methane and water. You measure a mass spectrum. Methane will give you a mass spectrum corresponding to the mass of methane, which is carbon, 1 carbon, and 4 hydrogens. That give you 12 plus 4. 4 is 1 into 4. So that gives you 16. Hydrogen, along with oxygen, let us say that is H2O, which is water. So that gives you a mass of 18. Oxygen is 16, 2 hydrogens 2, so 18. Now, this is very elementary mass spectrum, but it also gives you information about the isotopes of oxygen, the isotopes of carbon, the isotopes of hydrogen. It also tells you about, if you do different types of mass spectrum, it tells us about the information on this bonding, chemical bonding. Which bond is connected to which one? CH3 is one kind of molecule. You can understand whether there is a carbon-carbon bond or not by studying that. It is also possible by some other kind of mass spectrometry to study the shape of species. Now, I told you about small molecules, but imagine this can be done for proteins. This can be done for DNA. And sometimes people even think about measuring mass spectra of a bacterium. So you can think of mass spectrum in different directions, but it is an analytical technique to give us information about the mass of any object. But it is also quantitative to tell us about how much it is. Loose material, but the amount that is used for measurement is very, very tiny. So it is, you're not losing anything practical.
Yes, thank you, Professor. So next we have a question from Kartika Kalyan Sundar for Dr. Jyotirmay. So she says, hello, Dr. Jyotirmay. In your paper, Synthesis of Copper Nanoparticle Catalyst, were you able to see the peak for alkyne azide Cu adapt?
Well, in our paper, we have not studied the alkyne azide copper adduct per se, since our interest was to see this synthetically formed copper nanocatalyst, how this catalytic efficiency is better than the other traditional catalyst. But yes, I do agree this. If you study the catalytic cycle in great detail, yes, there is a chance that copper basically forms an adduct with the alkyne, and then the catalytic cycle gets completed. but no, we have not studied that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jyotirmay. Next, we have another question from Lalita Goteti. She's asking, is regeneration of nanoparticle catalyst expensive and difficult?
Well, if I were to generalize this, catalysts are very many. Some catalysts, it's difficult to regenerate. Some catalysts are easier to regenerate. In general, catalyst is something wherein you don't lose that material. And how much you can regenerate is essentially enhancing sustainability of that catalyst. Everyone wants to go towards that. In many of the processes, one is interested in using a material which can be used again and again, n number of times. And this is one of the parameters of catalyst recyclability, which people study. So if you need to address this to a specific question. So the kind of examples that Jyotirmay talked about are examples. There are a number of similar examples, are wherein you look at a fundamental phenomenon. And in that fundamental phenomenon, you see that this is possible, but additional studies have to happen at a scale. He's talking about materials at milligram scales to gram scale, but things have to be talked about at a much larger scale to appreciate the industrial utility of such processes, where recyclability is also an important parameter. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So we have around 8 more questions. Do we have time to take
Go ahead as quickly as possible you can, and then yeah.
Yes. So we have a question from Arnav Agrawal, and he's asking, can the polluting gases be chemically treated such that the product obtained from the treatment can be reused in some other manner?
Yes, so this is the whole idea of green processes. So anything that you produce, which may be a waste, you use it in another cycle and produce a different product. So for example, BASF, it's the largest manufacturing factory in globally, chemicals manufacturing. So one end, it puts some ingredient and then makes a product. In the process, another byproduct comes out, which may not be needed, but that is used to produce something else. And ultimately, nothing is wasted. So this is the dream of organic chemistry. This is the dream of industrial science. This is the dream of sustainability. Thank you.
Next, we have a question from Kshitij Jha. He's asking, can we create better batteries with better nanomaterials? Will it be more efficient and or affordable?
This is what much more work is required. It very much is possible. Jha, you need to join a research team to explore this. Yeah.
We have a question from Brajesh Sharma. So he's asking, I would like to ask, storage of hydrogen in